أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين فاطر السماوات والأرضين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين المبعوث رحمة للعالمين شفيع المذنبين وحبيب قلوب الصادقين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الأطيبين الأطهرين الهداة المهديين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى محمد وآل محمد. And my prayers, best wishes, al-Mujtaba alayhi salatu wassalam. This is a very blessed occasion, and I had, in view of the fact that it is the month of Ramadan, you have just had iftar, and it is difficult to listen to a long speech. I had prepared 5 brief points that I wanted to talk about in this Milad. And alhamdulillah, we had some very heartfelt and very beautiful and very meaningful poetry recited before my talk. And so of those 5 points, I will say that 2 points have been conveyed better than I could convey them in my speech through the poetry. And so I will leave you just with 3 of those points, inshallah, and very soon we will conclude the program. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now let me just tell you what those 2 points were, because sometimes in the beauty of poetry we forget that when we compose and when we listen to poetry about Ahlul Bayt, then the point is not just the beauty of the language, and the point is not just the beauty of the recitation, but this is for us the applied tafsir of the Quran. It is a lesson of aqeedah, it is a lesson of ethics, it is a lesson of how to live our life, which is known as fiqh. And so all of these come together, but because it is recited beautifully and because the words are beautiful, those deeper meanings sometimes are not as evident to us. So I won't talk in detail, but those 2 points are, number 1, we should always remember that Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salatu wassalam, they have the same values and principles that they upheld in their life. The differences are only because of different circumstances. So they are the flowers of a single garden, or the flowers of a single plant, which form one bouquet, not several separate teachings. And then we talk about Imam Hassan, we talk about Imam Hussein. It is not that Imam Hassan had a peace and Imam Hussein rose up in rebellion, but it is the same character and the same practice. That is the first point, and that was conveyed in the language of poetry with figurative expressions, and so I will not talk about that in more detail. The second point, we should always remember, although there is a special love we have for Imam Hussein, and that is also part of a hadith of the Prophet, that there is a unique burning in the mention of Hussein alayhi salam for every believer. But Imam Hassan was the Imam even of Imam Hussein. And that is a very important point. Imam Hussein's struggle is beautiful because he never wanted war. But when it was forced upon him, then he showed how you can defeat military power through purity. Purity wins over power. Sincerity wins over swords. And that is set by the example of Imam Hassan first and continued by Imam Hussein. This was also demonstrated in the poetry we had, and so I will not talk about that in more detail. These are the 2 points which, alhamdulillah, those of you who came before me, you very eloquently, very beautifully conveyed the message. May Allah grant you tawfiq and success to continue serving the path of Ahlul Bayt. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So what remains for me now is the remaining 3 brief messages, and I will inshallah not take up more time than is possible for us to absorb and to benefit from. From the life of Imam Hassan alayhi salatu was salam, sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, we learn certain lessons about both the essence of Islam and the essence of living our life as a follower of the Prophet. Not just as a Muslim in name, not just as a Muslim in culture or identity, but a Muslim through our beliefs, through our values, through our practice, through our words, in every dimension of our life. The first of these is that we should be a student of Islam from the beginning of our life until our final breath in this world. That process of learning is not just one stage in our life and then when we graduate we say we're done. This idea of graduation never existed in Islamic culture. And the idea of retirement never existed in Islamic culture. Both of these are bid'ah. And they are a bid'ah that come from an un-Islamic value system. The reason why people take pride in their graduation is because their education is a means to an end. They want to get a degree in order to then earn money. And so sometimes you want to rush it, sometimes you want to cut corners, sometimes you have various kinds of other calculations. But in Islam, ilm itself is sacred. And the ilm that we give value to is the ilm that is more valuable to us than anything else in life. We would give our money in order to acquire it. We would make time in order to be able to have access to it. It is not a means to some kind of greater material reward. It is its reward in itself. And so that is why you never say that I am going to graduate and I am going to be finished. At most, in our Islamic society, we used to have ijazah. So students would learn the Quran, for example, according to a particular style of recitation, and then they would get an ijazah of that recitation. That I have seen a teacher and I can read the Quran correctly. I know how to read it. So they would get an ijazah. Now this person is qualified to read or to teach the Quran. That ijazah was not a graduation degree, but it was a certificate that you have now accomplished one stage and you can move to the next stage. So now you can learn hifz, or now you can learn tafsir, or now you can go on to study aqidah, the science of Islamic beliefs, and so on and so forth. This was our Islamic culture and our Islamic practice. It's a lifelong process because you value it. And then when you graduate from one stage, you go on to the next stage. Even if you've already reached middle age, even if you've already reached old age. You know that many of the companions of our 6th Imam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu was-salam, like Zurara ibn A'yan, like Muhammad ibn Muslim al-Thaqafi, like Burayd al-Ijli, like Abu Basir. Many of these were companions of our 5th Imam. And they had studied with our 5th Imam, Imam Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salatu was-salam. And some of them were the same age as Imam Ja'far Sadiq, or they were even maybe some years older than Imam Ja'far Sadiq. But it was their pride, even when they went to Kufa, which was where most of them lived, they were their ulama. They were what we would consider like our maraji' al-taqleed. That was the role that these people had in their city, the source of guidance and teaching for their companions and for the Shia of Ahlul Bayt. But it was their pride when they would get the opportunity to perform Hajj or to perform Umrah and to come and to study with Imam Ja'far Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. Normally people would say outside of the followers of Ahlul Bayt that now I have reached an age where it doesn't look appropriate for me to show humility before somebody with greater knowledge. Now I have a following of my own. I am a professional in my own right. And this is something that we find within even our communities sometimes. An alim, when they have a little bit of a following, they have a little bit of prestige, they think that now I don't need any kind of humility before those who are more senior to myself. Maybe even among some of our community members who are good speakers and orators, good poets, you sometimes find that now they feel a little bit of independence because now I have a following, I have developed some talent. And this is found within the Muslim world and history as well. But it was the teaching of Ahlul Bayt and the followers of Ahlul Bayt that you always seek out those who are senior to you. Even if you are now at the top of your field, even if people come to you for your fatwas, or they come to you for your guidance or your talents or your mentorship, then don't think, I am now a mentor. You always think that when I have this greater responsibility that people are coming to me, who should I turn to be humble and to continue to progress? And this was the teaching and even the practice of Ahlul Bayt. If you want to see this connection to scholarship as a lifelong process, one of the most beautiful incidences is from the life of our second Imam, Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba, when he was a child. And because many of you will have heard the story, I will just mention it for barakah and to draw our attention. Lady Fatima, salamullahi alayha, would work at home. And she had a very full life as the mother of children, as the source of support for so many women in Medina. She would teach them, she would provide them assistance sometimes when their families were going through difficulties, when their husbands had been martyred or injured. So she would be the one who would look after the needs of so many people in Medina. And therefore, she was not always able to be present for the sermons, for the teachings of the Prophet. The deal between Lady Fatima and Amir al-Mu'mineen was that Amir al-Mu'mineen would keep her abreast of what was taught by the Prophet. So every day when he would come home, he would say that, "Oh Fatima, let me tell you what ayah was revealed today. What tafsir was given by the Prophet, what khutbah was given by the Prophet." If you know that Imam Ali was known as the most eloquent of the Arabs, then the eloquence of Lady Fatima was visible even before the eloquence of Amir al-Mu'mineen was visible. Eloquence of Amir al-Mu'mineen showed itself 25 years later in Kufa. But the eloquence and the expertise of Lady Fatima, it showed itself in the khutbah fadakiyah, which she gave right after the death of the Prophet at that young age. So this was the nature of the relationship between Imam Ali and Lady Fatima. And sometimes, I don't know, sometimes if you learn something new and you hold it in your mind, these days people don't hold it, they just post it on WhatsApp and forward it immediately to everybody they know. But back before we had social media, sometimes you would keep something in mind and you would say that, I know somebody who's going to enjoy this bayt of poetry. Somebody who's going to enjoy this new information, who's going to benefit. And so I'm going to convey it to that person. And Amir al-Mu'mineen, he came home with that same longing and that same love. A new ayah was revealed today, Lady Fatima, let me tell you. And what would she say? She would say, "Oh, Abul Hassan, is it this verse?" And then she would recite that verse. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And Imam Ali would say, "O daughter of the Prophet, this was just revealed before I came home. How do you already know it?" And she would say that you have a son, Hassan. He ran from the masjid and he said, "Mother, let me tell you this verse that my grandfather recited on the mimbar today." And Imam Hassan at that young age, he was 7 when the Prophet passed away, would convey the message so beautifully that Imam Ali would say, "What do I have to add?" So this is the principle of Ahlul Bayt. Lady Fatima was not in need of teaching when her daughter Zainab is alima ghayru mu'allama. If Zainab is alima ghayr mu'allama, then Lady Fatima does not need a mu'allim. But this was the adab of Ahlul Bayt. Imam Hassan from that young age. So number 1 is a lifelong commitment to learning, to honoring the study of Islam. That is an end in itself. Sometimes people ask that question in our communities, that what do ulama do? Sometimes people have that misconception कि उनका काम तो बस जो है वो एक जुमा है, एक दुआए कमाल का प्रोग्राम है और एक तकरीर करते हैं, बस 3 घंटे का काम है, मुझे ऐसा काम मिल जाए तो मैं नौकरी छोड़ दूं. I've heard that from many people in our community. Now, maybe there are some people who just work 3 hours a week. If that's the case, then that is that lost opportunity on the part of that person. But the proper job of an alim is to try to spend their time learning and understanding the teachings of Islam so they can convey that to others. The closest example is a professor at a university, even though a professor is to teach, not to live. But how many classes does a professor teach? Is it more than 9 hours? That is even an unusual schedule for a professor a week. So this is something which is an end in itself. And this is what we should judge our Islamic values on the basis of, not on the basis of something which is from an un-Islamic culture. Same thing comes with retirement. If you are a Muslim, you are not working just for the sake of earning a sufficient amount of money to live. You are working because work is sacred. And so you don't retire. You can quit one job and start another. But then don't think of that as retired. Think of that I have transferred from working at this company now, for example, to working full-time for my community. But we don't have that concept that I am done and now I'm just going to take a trip around the world and I am going to relax. Inshallah, that will be there for us in the hereafter. But in this world, so long as we are able, we should try to work and serve. And whatever traveling we want to do, whatever time we want to spend with our family, we should do that while we are working and after we have completed our jobs, because that is part of how we should live our life. That's not just something that is for the period of our life when we're going to enjoy and not contribute. So that is the first principle. Second principle is that we should always maintain a connection to the genuine teachings of Islam, the original teachings of Islam. That is where we find our moral bearings, that's our anchor, and that is where we are centered. Many times, we move beyond our origins and then we lose sight of those values that motivated us at one time. Sometimes within a family, people acquire friends and they forget their relatives and their family. Sometimes people get married, and then when they get married, their families will complain that they have forgotten us. Sometimes we may get involved in our career, we may advance economically, and then we forget those loyalties we had and those obligations that we had throughout our life. This is natural that when we come to something new, we often are negligent of that which was there before. We're not appreciative of it. But what we learn from Ahlul Bayt is that which is the origin of our identity is rooted in our religion, and we never forget it. In fact, we renew it time and time again, so that as we acquire new experiences, new opportunities, we are better able to fulfill our basic obligations. Your family is important to you because of Islam. And so you never move past your family. Those people who are close to you, they are part of your Islamic obligations. وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ الَّذِي تَسَاءَلُونَ بِهِ وَالْأَرْحَامِ. The Quran says that your family comes with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we never move past. And this also is illustrated in a very beautiful incident which took place some years after the Prophet passed away. One of the companions of the Prophet was Bilal. And Bilal was a lover of Ahlul Bayt. After the death of the Prophet, the government wanted to say that we are continuing. So they said, this is Khalifatu Rasulillah. They made that title to say that we are continuing the same government which the Prophet had. And one of the means they wanted to use was to keep the mu'adhin of the Prophet. This would be a very big propaganda victory if they could say that it's the same adhan, it is the same salat, it is the same message. And because Bilal knew who he gave the adhan for, he did not fall into that trap. So history does not record that Bilal recited the adhan for any of the three caliphs who said that they were the successors of the Prophet. If he recited the adhan, or I should say began the adhan, it was only when requested to by Ahlul Bayt. One of those times was when Bilal was living in Syria, and he moved to Syria to escape that demand because it was the first caliph who had purchased the freedom of Bilal and would sometimes say that this is now a right that you owe me. It's to escape that pressure and that demand not to be misused. Bilal had gone to Syria. He lived in Syria in exile. It was exile at the time. Self-imposed exile for the sake of a greater purpose. Once the Prophet came to Bilal in a dream. He said, Bilal, you have done jafa. Jafa means that you have the opportunity and you have not come for ziyarah. And that concept applies to you and me as well. If we have the ability to go for umrah, to go for hajj, to go for ziyarah, then we should not do jafa of Ahlul Bayt. Meaning that should be part of our planning, that we want to renew our commitment to Ahlul Bayt periodically. It doesn't mean that every year we have important things to accomplish in our family, in our community. You say, no, I'm going to Karbala. No, you have many obligations. One of those obligations is to visit and to renew your covenant with the Ma'sumin. So many blessings come from that. Prophet said, Ya Bilal, you have not visited me. Bilal came to Medina. In Medina, he saw Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein at that time as young men. And Bilal was immediately transported to the time of the Prophet. And so he grabbed both Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein in his arms and began to weep. And then Imam Hassan said to Bilal, or Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein together said to Bilal, Bilal, will you recite the adhan for us? كَمَا كُنْتَ تُؤَذِّنْ عَلَىٰ أَهْدِ جَدِّنَا. As you used to recite the adhan when our grandfather was alive. And Bilal went, as he used to do some decades before, he went to the roof of one of the houses in Medina and he began to recite the adhan. And it was as if this was a reminder for the people of Medina what they lost by turning their back on Ahlul Bayt. Medina had seen battles. Medina had seen shuhada, Medina had seen much grief. But when Bilal recited that adhan, it is said in history that there were more people weeping on that day than had ever wept in Medina before, because of that reminder. This is the reminder from Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein, that we don't forget कि वो दिन तो गए, वो दौर गुजर गया, अब नया ज़माना. We have to remember that those values that formed our identity on the basis of Islam, they're always going to be part of our identity. That's not the past, that is the past, the present, the future, and that is our aspiration for the hereafter. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So first was a lifelong commitment to learning. Second was a reminder of the basis of our identity and the genuine teachings of Islam. Those don't grow old, and those are not to be forgotten. And the third is the discipline, which we learn from Imam Hassan. When somebody insults you, it's easy to reply in kind. It's difficult to maintain a dignified silence. When somebody swears at you, insults you, says something unworthy, the easy thing is to insult them back. If somebody spreads a rumor, the easiest thing is to pass on that rumor. Ahlul Bayt don't want people who misuse the concept of aqeedat to say that I'm just going to do whatever comes to my mind. Jo ji mein aaya keh diya. Those are not the followers of Ahlul Bayt. What you say and how you say it and when you say it should be in service of a higher goal, based on wisdom, based on knowledge. Emotion is good, but emotion needs to be disciplined to be expressed well. And if it is undisciplined, then that was the practice of the enemies of Ahlul Bayt. You can say words of praise of Ahlul Bayt, but that is still the character and the practice and the culture of the enemies of Ahlul Bayt. But the culture and the practice of the followers of Ahlul Bayt is to say what is right and to say it right. Both what is right and when it is right and how it is right. And that discipline is what Imam Hassan alayhi salatu wasalam represented in his life. If you look, Imam Hassan had many opportunities to win a material battle against Muawiyah. The majority of the Muslim world still supported Imam Hassan, not Muawiyah. The Muhajirin and the Ansar supported Imam Hassan and not Muawiyah. The wealthiest provinces of the Muslim world, Iraq and the newly conquered territories of Khurasan, were under the control of Imam Hassan and not Muawiyah. If Imam Hassan wanted to play politics, then Imam Hassan could have played politics. And some of those enemies said they were Shia. They were not Shia. They were the Khawarij, or the remainder of the Khawarij, but they were within the army of Imam Hassan. They said, why didn't you do that? And they came and they said that we could have won, we had a battle, we had an army, we had provisions, we could have succeeded. Why did we make a treaty with Muawiyah? But Imam Hassan said that this is not a battle for territory. This is not a battle for a throne. This is not a battle for wealth. This is a battle for honor and principle. And those who say then that this was the battle between two houses or two dynasties, Banu Umayyah and Banu Hashim, that is why they are mistaken. On one side it was a battle for a throne. On the other side it was the battle for the sake of the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not for a worldly throne. On the one side, it was the battle for worldly wealth, and on the other side, it was the battle for the wealth of Islamic teachings. One wanted to rule the world, and the other wanted to extend the rule of Islam over the hearts and souls of people to serve as an example. And so Imam Hassan said that I will not compromise my values for the sake of worldly gain. And it was that lesson set by Imam Hassan that raised a generation of martyrs who gave their life with Imam Hussein in Karbala. Because if Imam Hassan had not set that principle that this is how we fight, and this is why we fight, then Imam Hussein would not have followers who were able to stand in the face of 30,000 drawn swords and say we see victory on our side and defeat on the side of the enemy. Muawiyah broke the terms of the truce from the very first day. But Imam Hassan, because of that discipline, for 10 years, preserved that truce so nobody could say that Imam Hassan was just waiting for a chance to begin the battle again. And Imam Hussein preserved the terms of that truce for 10 years after the martyrdom of Imam Hassan. So nobody could say that they were looking for power. And when people understood that that truce had come to an end, the Imams, they have the right from the beginning to assert their authority. They did not have to wait for the death of Muawiyah. They did not have to wait for Muawiyah to go to his eternal punishment in order to assert their right. But that discipline was so that society and people would be able to join them. For 10 years, Imam Hassan did not assert his right. Imam Hussein did not assert his right. When Muawiyah died, then Imam Hussein raised the standard which Imam Hassan had given him and set that example which is so beautiful for all of us. So once again, we learn from Imam Hassan a lifelong commitment to learning. We learn from Imam Hassan the importance of principle and remaining connected to those principles. We learn from Imam Hassan the importance of our discipline and always saying and doing what is right in service of a higher goal and not just in service of our feelings. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow all of us to be connected to Ahlul Bayt. And on this day of celebration, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow the du'as and the prayers of Imam Hassan to come and benefit us, especially as we move forward as a community with a goal for expansion. May Allah bring our hearts together in service of a single purpose, and may these gatherings of remembrance grow and flourish and thrive, and may all of us derive the benefit in this world and the reward in the hereafter for this ibadah and this remembrance of Ahlul Bayt. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.